Story 1. When I realized that the most fulfilling, wonderful, and enjoyable thing I do is spend a quiet evening alone and go to bed at a reasonable hour. Story 2. When I finally had to stop eating fast food because it was making me gain weight despite running and cycling almost every day. Enjoy your metabolism while it lasts. You cannot outrun a poor diet. Story 3. I was walking downtown a couple of years ago. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw an older man walking in the same direction. Then I realized it was my reflection. Story 4. I recently said, there aren't many single men in their 30s around here, but there are at least a few attractive divorced men in their 40s. I am 35. I was 20 just yesterday. When did divorced men in their 40s become an acceptable dating demographic? Story 5. When I started to enjoy watching the wild birds and my husband stopped asking me to help him with heavy items, he began asking the kids instead. Story 6. When I realized that I didn't know who any of the people on the tabloid magazine covers were and, more importantly, I didn't care. Story 7. When I told my coworker what year I started working there, he said, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't even born yet." Story 8. I was feeling great, not paying much attention to the mirror while shaving for the last few decades. I attended a 50-year high school reunion committee meeting, looked around the table and thought, oh no, who are all these old people? Story 9. When I calculated that I have about 25 years to live based on the average lifespan of males in my family, I was surprised. Story 10. Heartburn. I used to treat my body poorly. I consumed cheap alcohol, fast food, and added hot sauce to everything. I skipped meals because I couldn't be bothered to cook, experienced sleep deprivation, remained sedentary all day, and drank multiple shots of espresso before noon. It was grim. Then I turned 30, and the heartburn started. Medication didn't help. What did help was clean living. Now I eat vegetables and snack on fruit or occasionally have a small handful of raw nuts if I'm particularly hungry. I sleep more than 3 hours a night, exercise, and limit my coffee intake to 1 shot of espresso a day. I miss the old days. Heartburn is a challenge. Story 11. When professions like police, fire, and doctors were all younger than I am, I never went to a professional hockey game because the players looked 12. Story 12. I attended law school at 29 and realized how little I wanted to engage with students who came straight from undergraduate studies. If you want to meet up at 9 p.m. for drinks, I am not interested. Once I am home and comfortable, I am not going back out. Story 13. Looking forward to an early night yet somehow failing to get a proper night's sleep. Constant, chronic back pain makes it difficult to rest. Story 14. Legs that ache when I'm trying to get to sleep, as I'm an avid walker, taking more than 15,000 steps per day. Magnesium glycinate helps a little. Story 15. I started to get excited about furniture. I have 3 chairs and 2 couches. My boyfriend and I live together. Story 16. Every time one of my kids says, "Let me ask my mom," and then asks me, it blows my mind. I'm the mom, I'm the adult, and you're asking me. Story 17. When I stopped looking forward to every new technology advancement. I bought a new car in 2024. It has a touchscreen, which I do not like. It also has Bluetooth. Do you know how many things I own with Bluetooth? 2, my car and my phone. An electric adjustable desk at work. Why is my desk electric? Why can't I just sit like a normal person? All the social media platforms. Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, and 1,000 others that I have never used or even heard of. Muttering those young people under my breath all the time. Story 18. When hangovers became debilitating, not getting enough sleep even when sober feels like a hangover. Story 19. One time, I was listening to the radio, and the host said they were going to play a song considered a classic rock hit. Wake Me Up When September Ends by Green Day. That made me feel very old. Story 20. Watching a music award ceremony and not recognizing many of the artist names makes me wonder if this is what people enjoy listening to these days. Story 21. When I developed sciatica at 27 after a childhood and college spent diving as a soccer goalkeeper, it was challenging. The sciatica has improved now, but I can't remember the last time I didn't have to think about how I was putting on my socks. Story 22. When I was a teenager, I used to play pickup soccer at the nearby fields with a group of older uncles and dads, along with some high school and college guys mixed in. I noticed that the high school players would have really worn out cleats from playing multiple times a week for 3 to 4 seasons a year, but the cleats were usually this year's or last year's model since they were getting new gear when the season started. Meanwhile, the older players would have nearly mint cleats from 10 to 15 years ago, which they would pull out for the pickup games. They would wear collector's items on their feet just for the Sunday games, which was wild to see as a teenager. I figured they had the money to spend but only had time to play one weekend a month, so the shoes didn't wear down as quickly as those of the younger players. Fast forward to last month, my usual pair of cleats was waterlogged, so I pulled out some barely worn Hypervenom 1 cleats from 2015, purchased around the time of my last few competitive games. I received a lot of comments during the game from players younger than me, and as soon as I said, "Yeah, they don't even make these anymore, not since 10 years ago," I realized in that moment that I was now the older guy with the nearly mint cleats pulling them out for weekend pickup. Story 23. When I was diagnosed with my autoimmune disease at 18, I was told certain organs would fail and that connective tissue damage would occur as I got older. Well, those things are happening now, so I guess I'm older. Story 24. I took my son to a skate park for his first time. He was 9 and I was 40. I hadn't been on my board in many years and was just coasting around the park, gaining confidence as I went along. I attempted a 50 to 50 on a ledge and almost made it, but the trucks caught due to a lack of speed. I positioned myself further back and decided to push extra hard on my kicks to gain momentum. On the second kick, I went down, feeling as if someone hit my calf with a baseball bat. I had a torn Achilles in my right ankle. It was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, worse than kidney stones. I had to somehow drive us home since it was just the two of us. I learned a valuable lesson that day. Story 25. The young waiter at Applebee's asked me if I wanted her to tap my card for me on the table kiosk. I am 33 and just got off work. Please give me a minute to sort myself out. Story 26. When I make a casual comment to a child or teenager, such as, "Cool shirt," or "Are you using this machine?" At the gym, they look at me as if I have 3 heads. That's when I realize I am old. I have become that strange older person now. Story 27. When I scrolled past this, I didn't want to read the responses because I felt they were completely relatable. Story 28. When my favorite songs started being played on the oldie station, I guess the fact that I'm referencing the radio is significant. Story 29. 2 things: groaning when standing up and having to use a dictionary more to understand younger people. Story 30. A high school student in a parking lot was asking for donations to send the basketball team across the country to a tournament. He addressed me as Sir. I am 25 years old, but I have probably been called Sir less than 10 times. It had probably been weeks since I last saw a teenager, as I don't often spend time in similar environments. Story 31. Those little knocks you experience as a child tend to diminish over time. A minor discomfort may linger for a while, even months. It will gradually, hopefully, decline, but not many individuals continue to play competitively in most contact sports past their early 30s. Story 32. When a bad night leads to multiple days of not feeling your best, injuries take longer to heal. It's no longer a matter of ignoring injuries and pushing through. I am currently at a ski resort with a sore knee and cannot ski anymore. If I force it, it will only cause greater problems later. Story 33. I was on a group call in Microsoft Teams, and it had the view of the room. I thought, who's that old guy at the back? Yeah, it was me. Story 34. My husband and I have had a few rounds of intimate moments in the closet because my teenage son won't leave the house. I've realized it's much harder to be intimate outside of the bedroom than it used to be. Story 35. When my mood was more cold than hot, I knew I was done. Now, if the dog barks, I lose energy, whereas in my 30s, it would remain strong for a while after finishing. Erections are like heartbeats. You only get a limited number of natural ones in your life. Story 36. When my forehead wrinkles set in and more recently, age spots appeared on my face. I honestly don't mind either. but they are definitely a sign that I am aging. Story 37. Last year, when I started to dislike foods I used to enjoy, such as sweet foods, cookies, and cakes, I now prefer to eat fruits instead of those items. Story 38. Today, I had a moment. After my run this morning, my feet were hurting, and I thought it might be time for some orthotics as I have high arches. I felt post-run that my arches were collapsing because I've gained a few pounds lately. I may be overweight for the shoes I'm wearing. I'm not lightweight right now. I need durability and cushioning. Story 39. I looked forward to an early night and a good night's sleep. Grocery shopping became exciting. I started making dinner reservations for 5 p.m. The music was too loud at concerts. Story 40. When I took my son to a birthday party at a roller skating rink, he asked me to skate with him. However, I was unemployed at the time and could only wonder what bones might break if I fell. I haven't skated since, even with decent health insurance. Story 41. One of my friends announced she was having a child, and I thought, isn't she a bit young for that? But then I remembered we are 27. Story 42. Seeing my parents prepare for their departure and considering grocery runs as outings for the day, it feels like going out, especially with the current grocery prices. Story 43. When I, almost 37 years old, tried to do a 20-minute low-intensity cardio workout, I was out of breath after 4 minutes. Story 44. When I needed glasses at 45, I struggled to perform hard physical construction work such as roofing, digging, and pouring concrete. Story 45. My high school classmates have children who are now adults. My younger cousin is 25 and living with his girlfriend. My friend's daughter, who was born around the time I met him, is now 19. I have coworkers who were born after I graduated high school. I don't think of myself as getting older, but seeing all the kids grow up has made me realize I'm not so young anymore. Story 46. When I scrolled past this, I didn't want to read the responses because I felt they were completely relatable. Story 47. When a Reddit user commented, "After 40, the world starts forgetting about you," I reflected on that on my 40th birthday. Story 48. When my favorite songs started playing on the oldies station, I guess the fact that I am referencing the radio adds to the nostalgia. Story 49. I worked in a college bookstore with employees who were also students. One of the students referred to me as the mom of the crew, and that is when I realized I was getting old. I was in my mid-30s and did not have any children of my own. Story 50. When I started noticing people my age, I realized they looked old. Conversely, I noticed that younger people appeared very young, almost like children. Story 51. I yelled at the kids in the grocery store parking lot when I drove by them. I saw them throwing and smashing glass bottles, and I said, "No, not cool." Then I realized I have always felt old in my soul. Story 52. Yesterday, I found a gray hair in my mustache. The hairs have been changing for a while, but this one stood out. Story 53. I had a 20-year-old flirt with me, and my first thought was, does your mother know what you're up to? Also, please go away. Story 54. I designed a popular vape shop in my city and stood in the corner while the photographer documented the space during the launch. A couple of kids came in to buy items, and I glared at them disapprovingly because they seemed too young to be using vape products. They weren't that young, and I'm not that old, but it was an awkward moment when the owner introduced us right after the kids sensed I was about to say something. Story 55. I played rugby until I was 34. 2 years after I stopped, I broke my metatarsal while sidestepping my dog in my in-laws' front garden. I suddenly felt old and decrepit. Just as I was recovering and ready to lose the boot, one of my old rugby teammates put out a request for a boot brace or crutches, as he had just ruptured his Achilles tendon while running for a bus. Story 56. It's always been in the back of my mind, but it truly hit home when my parents were in the hospital, and I realized we might have to start looking at retirement or assisted living homes for them soon. Story 57. The first moment? It was when my friend and I stood in the mosh pit, waiting for the first band to start. We both nearly passed out and had to make our way to the nosebleeds. It's all been downhill from there. I think we weren't even 30 yet. Story 58. I just had to buy orthotic insoles for my shoes because I am experiencing heel and foot pain that won't resolve, which is also causing ankle and knee pain if I stand for too long. Story 59. I had a needle inserted in my foot today to remove fluid surrounding my ankle, because I do not sit at a desk all day and am on my feet. It was not a pleasant experience. My younger self was very upset, but my current self felt relief and embraced the outcome. Story 60. Now, 5 years ago, my friend was visiting us. I had known him since junior high, and we had been sitting down and chatting for about 2 hours. All three of us groaned while getting up. I immediately laughed and said, "We all made noise to get up. We are old now. Good times. Hooray. Hot flashes and body pains await me." Story 61. When I was sitting at the top of the stairs talking with my teenage son, the phone rang downstairs. By the time I had gotten to my feet, my son had already leapt up, bounded down the stairs, and answered the phone. I was only 48 at the time and didn't realize I was getting older already. Story 62. When I was in my 30s, I had to warm up before attempting to reach my maximum, rather than just walk into the gym and try to achieve a personal record immediately. Story 63. When the babies I used to care for started having their own children, my own kids began to think I was old and uncool. Story 64. When I calculated that we are closer to the year 2050 than to the year 2000, I realized it was a few years ago that we were actually closer to 2050 than to 1990. This conversation arose sometime during the pandemic, but as of 2 months ago, we can now compare it to the year 2000. Story 65. I used to sweat excessively. On the way to work, I would hold my arms over the car vents trying to dry out and had to resort to strong deodorant. Overnight, the sweating stopped, my hair began to fall out, and no matter what I did, I gained weight. I realized that was the moment everything changed. Story 66. My wife and I agreed we were getting old because we can't spend 5 minutes in a shop without one of us looking for a tissue because our nose is running. Story 67. I'm only 24, but one of the shows I used to watch turned 20, and I was like, 20 years? I feel old. I can only imagine how I will feel when I turn 40. Story 68. I was carded well into my late 30s. I'm very short with round cheeks, so I understand why it happened. Sometimes I was carded multiple times by the same bartender and often questioned. However, something changed when I turned 42, and I stopped getting carded except in cities that require it. People still don't believe I'm almost 50, but they no longer think I could be 23 either. Additionally, my knees always hurt. Story 69. About 3 years into the pandemic, I should have kept exercising. I knew better and predicted this, but it happened a lot slower than I expected. There was a 2-year lag due to disuse atrophy. Story 70. Hitting 70. While I am in excellent health, my motivation is not what it once was. I am content to do less. Story 71. Noticing that all the sports stars I used to watch are now the commentators. When I downloaded Snapchat, I couldn't figure out how to navigate the user interface. Story 72. Last year, I suddenly realized that I had been handling funerals for a majority of people aged 55 to 65. This trend is continuing this year. Story 73. I had my son at 18, and he made me a grandmother at 39. She's 6 now, and whenever she calls me grandma in public, people often gasp and say, "No way are you her grandmother. I thought you were her mother." We still get that occasionally, but it happens less frequently. Story 74. I am 41 and still haven't had that moment yet. It's all in how you approach life, in my humble opinion. Story 75. I was walking around my local college campus and thought to myself, wow, all these students must be on a field trip to a lab or something. Realizing they were regular college-aged adults made me feel like the guy who drinks from the wrong cup in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Story 76. Realizing how much I love staying in on weekend evenings and not feeling any fear of missing out when I would rather be in bed early than out. Story 77. When I realized I needed to slow down a bit and be mindful of my steps, I found it easy to be thrown off balance due to aging and hearing difficulties. Story 78. I could not digest many foods and had to ensure I was getting enough fiber or I would be in pain the next day. Story 79. Right around the time I noticed my beard starting to go gray, the salt and pepper look began to emerge. Truth be told, it didn't bother me. Story 80. I don't know when it actually happened, but when my brain and experience said, "We got this," my body felt confused. Story 81. I am 84 years old, and I believe it was when I turned 80 that I started reflecting on the past. Before that, I helped my grandson raise his child when I was 69, still physically fit and active. My great-grandson was only 6 months old at the time, and now he is 15. His father took over parenting when he was about 7 years old after getting married, but he is now divorced and in his 30s. He has since established a significant relationship with someone who has a child of her own, a 7-year-old boy. My great-grandson's mother left him with his father, who was just 19, and he has never really known her. She moved back to Michigan from North Carolina when he was 6 months old and essentially abandoned him. She also had a little girl a couple of years older than my great-grandson and left her with her own mother. During the years we lived together, I treated him as if he were my own child, from 6 months to 7 years old. The owners of the apartment we lived in for 6 years loved him as well. Overall, it was a good time for him in many ways. Story 82. When I walked by a music venue, I didn't recognize a single band that would be playing there over the next 2 months. Story 83. I'm the youngest in my family, so I always have this "I'm young" mentality. One day, my brother and I were having a conversation about how we needed to see a physiotherapist because my heel hurts and his back and knees hurt. I realized, wow, we're getting older. Story 84. I used to be able to read the numbers engraved on carburetor jets, which are tiny brass components, just by holding them really close to my eye. Then one day, I couldn't anymore. I had to use a magnifying glass like the older individuals. Story 85. When I went in for my annual vision exam and new glasses, I was told that I had a severe cataract. I am 46 years old. I was referred from LensCrafters to see a medical doctor. I sat in the waiting room surrounded by older individuals. I am scheduled for surgery next week. To be fair, the doctor, who is much younger than I am, mentioned that I am one of his youngest patients. Story 86. I got home from work on Friday and had a backache. I laid on the couch with my legs elevated. I am 30 years old. Of course, I teach first grade, which might have contributed to it. Story 87. When the actors who were once the cool young protagonists of movies began to play the parents of new cool young protagonists, these new protagonists started to resemble children. Story 88. This morning, I pirouetted off the toilet to the sink to wash my hands and thought, how nice. I bet someone would judge you for being so silly at your age. How old am I? I really should stop forgetting my age. Next thing I know, I'll be 40 and not even notice. Oh, 40 actually isn't that far off. That's a new number. I never thought I'd reach 40. I wonder if I look old to other people. I don't look old to myself. Look at those pretty eyes. Mom says chubby cheeks make you look younger. If I keep losing weight like this, maybe I'll look older. I'll look as sick as I am. Weird. 40 is a scary number. Oh well, we all have to get there someday. Coffee. Story 89. I began to worry about my children more than myself and started driving like a cautious parent. I used to be reckless. Now, every thought about my actions revolves around how they could affect them. Story 90. When I turned 38 a few years ago and split with my partner of 10 years, I realized that the dating scene was barren and that I had no idea how to be social or make connections with people outside of work anymore. I noticed that bands that were fresh in my mind retired or broke up over 10 years ago. I saw that all the movie actors I knew started passing away, and I realized I didn't know any of the new ones. Story 91. When a teenage couple contacted me on a dating app expressing interest in exploring a relationship with an older woman. Story 92. I am currently going through it. Although I am only 37, I have been working in hospitality since I was 16, whether that was part-time or full-time. I have also spent 5 years in the Army. My body is slowly giving up on the long shifts behind the bar. I am part of a management team that runs 2 cocktail bars. Because the bars are small and higher end, it saves us a lot of money on working shifts. However, I do not recover from the weekends, which consist of two 10-hour shifts. It hurts, not just physically, as I wake up with pins and needles everywhere on Sundays, but more so mentally. I've always said that I will quit doing shifts when I am 40, and as such, I have given myself a little over 2 years to find something else to do, but I don't think I will make it. It seems like the guests at the bar are getting younger. I ID someone who looks 16, but they are actually 21. I can no longer see the measuring lines in the jigger because it is somehow too dark. I am losing my touch. I am slowly losing the ability to do the things I love. Since I am the oldest on the team, I do not have any peers to talk to who are experiencing the same. The next one is 7 years younger. It really sucks. Story 93. I felt excited to buy a handheld vacuum because now my car can be pristine. I can spot clean inside without having to get the big vacuum out. Turns out I am middle-aged. Story 94. Kids on iPads. I grew up with social media, but really? Would you rather have your kids spend time on a screen than outside? Story 95. Every time I see my mom, I am surprised that she appears visibly older than the image I have of her in my mind. I am starting to resemble that image more than she does. Story 96. Just last week, I was working in a doctor's office when a patient checked in who was born in May 2010. This child was 15 years old and discussed how he just got his learner's permit. I graduated high school in May 2010, which was 15 years ago. Story 97. I started to prefer football managers over football players. I strained my back while searching for a suitcase. I can no longer drink white wine due to heartburn. The same goes for fatty foods. I intentionally started losing weight, and now I can easily see the effects of a few days of poor eating. Typical hangovers have turned into severe depressive episodes where I question every decision I have ever made. I stopped drinking spirits because they leave me unable to function the next day. Essentially, the next step is to stop drinking entirely. I showed my 12-year-old films I loved at his age and realized how inappropriate they are. I voluntarily began exercising. I addressed annoying teenagers on public transport. Story 98. When the attractive young woman in the bar spotted me, looked me over, approached me, and asked if I had dated her mother, which I had. I was 35 at the time. I am in my 60s now. And I don't think there's ever been anyone since who has made me feel that old. Story 99. In my early 50s, I was constantly reminded of my parents as they deteriorated and passed away. I stopped enjoying new music and lost the desire to drive far for fun activities. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.